Land Disposition Committee meeting. First item on the agenda this afternoon is a discussion with our town assessor, Andy, regarding valuation of properties and how it may affect or not affect our proceedings. So please proceed.
I'm assuming you're talking to me, Andy Machado, Town of Yarmouth Assessor. I would entertain questions from your committee as far as, rather than speak generally about how properties valued, we could go on for hours regarding that. So I think I'd prefer to take any specific questions that you might have.
Go ahead, Karen.
I think Rick and Kyle, maybe you can paraphrase the questions that you had posed to Andy in your memo or your email to him. I think Andy, the committee had questions. There's a parcel on Route 6A.
Yeah, if we're going to talk in specifics, and again, as Kyle and I did meet, and we kind of talked specifically about that specific parcel. But as far as the parameters of what the committee is looking for, we can go and put a value on that particular parcel that they're looking at, anywhere from $400 to $4,000, based on what it is they're looking for. If it's just simply valued as an unbuildable piece of property, we're going to put a value on it of $400. If you're looking for the contributory value, what that's going to create towards the existing parcel that it'll be added to, that's going to be closer to $4,000. So it really depends on what the committee's looking for.
Andy, that's a discussion we had at our last meeting, that there was some talk about properties being unbuildable, and I think it was I made the point that as a standalone, yes, but when it's added to an adjacent property, the game changes dramatically. It becomes a much more valuable piece to the person that wants to add it to their existing property.
Yeah, and specifically, and again, I don't know what the criteria is, but I think each individual case is going to be different, because if that person needs that for specific setbacks, that's going to be right. More valuable than if they just want to add it because it's there.
Sure.
In that case, they may just say, yeah, the hell with it. I'm not going to bother because it's not taxable and nobody can use it right now anyway. So.
I think there's a bit of a dilemma, because the way I understand it, if we're going to sell the piece of property, we need to make it available to anybody, not just to one person. And so I think maybe there needs to be some balance in, or even balance objectivity in setting the price for that parcel. The committee doesn't have, as part of its policies and procedures, how do we go about setting minimum price values? So Andy, on some of the other ones, they're looking at the assessed value because it's something to go on. This one, I mean, I don't know, maybe you just have an auction, but you could be kind of in the position just where you're going to get what one person is willing to pay for, because maybe the lots are only beneficial to one person. I don't know, Jim Sabin, how would you go about valuing the parcel?
Well, the problem you have here is and Andy will, I'm assuming, agree with me, that there's different types of value. So there's value in use, or value to an abutter, which, as Andy said, is more valuable than if it were to, say, you and I. We don't care about that piece of land. So if it's exposed to the market and meets the definition of market value, that abutter is not going to fall into the line of market value because of the criteria for market value. So we're talking about two different types of value. But I think in the case of what we're trying to do with liquidating things, yeah, that guy's going to be the one to buy it, but he's going to buy it at market value.
Mm-hmm.
I think, that's kind of we can't say, hey, listen, you're the butter, so we want to charge you more money. even though it's worth more to him than say Bob or me or anybody else who's not anywhere near it. So you can only, as far as maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I can see, the only thing we can really do is make it available to the general public, and that a butter happens to be part of the general public. He's going to pay $400 versus $4,000 because, if I understand right, we have to make this available to everybody. So, and I mean, put yourself in his situation. If you're that person and it put it out for sale, are you going to pay $4,000 when nobody else will?
Yeah. Kathy, go ahead.
I'm just curious because we have those two other parcels that we looked at the last meeting. One of them was a very small strip off Mill Pond that was assessed at $4,000. It's an unbuildable lot, but it was assessed at $4,000. And then there's also the other kind of like edge piece at the corner of Oaks Bluff and Hope, which was like 0.07 acres, and that was assessed at $9,000. So it doesn't seem to me to be fair to say that we're going to do the assessed values for these properties, and we assessed them somehow as the minimum, but then we're going to say this one, we're just going to let it go at market value. So you need to think of the consistencies with that. And I don't know, Andy, how those particular parcels, and we can certainly provide you with that information of where they are, how they were assessed. They're town-owned parcels, but they were assessed at $4,000 and $9,000 respectively.
At some point.
At some point, and they're completely unbuildable lots. The first one's like 0.03 acres. It's just a 10-foot wide strip between two properties.
But Kathy, you got to take into consideration things like location as well. Just because it's unbuildable, it might be an unbuildable lot in a very undesirable neighborhood where land values are A, or an unbuildable lot in Green Island where values are B.
Agreed. Agreed. And this is Yarmouthport, so I would think it would be worth more than something in West Yarmouth or South Yarmouth.
Maybe, maybe not.
So I don't know, Andy, I think that the committee at the last meeting, and Rick, you can correct me, I think they wanted to invite you in because we're going to be doing this on a routine basis. They need to get to a point where we have kind of a systematic approach to how are we going to recommend to the selectmen whether there's a minimum price value or whatnot. So I think there was some interest in just general appraising and kind of how do you go about setting those values. I don't know whether or not Kyle gave you the two parcels that Kathy was referencing. Those could be a good starting point.
I think we generally talked about the 6A parcel is what we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So Kathy and Karen, excuse me, Rick, if I can weigh in a minute. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. So when you talked about the ones we talked about last week, if you put those on the market or whatever it was a couple weeks ago, you have people on both sides of that parcel that are interested in it. They're going to bid against each other, or they're going to get together and say, hey, let's split the cost. So, you know, that's different than one that somebody doesn't have an abutter on either side, and the only value, the one that we're talking about with the drainage easement, that's clearly only valuable to that particular property owner, versus the one over in Mill Hill where two property owners have a desire to own that because it's beneficial to both of them. They'll end up through the market, competing with each other in the bidding process unless they conspire with each other to buy it at a price that they would then share or something. But other than that, they're different.
Sorry. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
The only other thing I'd like to ask if Andy could do is take some time to talk to the committee a little bit about classification codes, the difference between a 101 and a 130 and a 310, whatever they may be, but explaining how we apply that 130 code versus something like that. So, because I know I look at that code from time to time, and I understand it, but I'm sure that maybe some members of the committee would like to know that.
Christine and Tom, let's give Andy a chance to explain that to us, and I'll come back to you in order.
Sure. The codes are, as described by the Department of Revenue. A 130 code obviously is a vacant piece of land. It's assessed as a buildable piece of land. A 131 would be a potentially buildable piece of land. It probably has assessed with some sort of a discount. A 132 is an unbuildable lot and generally is valued as an unbuildable lot and should be assessed as, you know, uniformly, but I can tell you they're not all uniform. Some of them, I don't know the lots that Kathy referred to. I don't know what they're coded as. I don't know how they're valued. I don't know if they're valued as unbuildable or if they're valued as potentially buildable, if they're valued as vacant lots. I have no idea. All of those things are obviously going to play into it.
Right.
I don't know if that helps, if that answers the questions or not.
Andy, how is it determined that a lot is a 130 versus a 132? Are there criteria that they're applying, or a 131? Is it just site size and frontage and zoning compliance, or?
Again, we don't necessarily really get into the zoning compliance. It's buildable until we're told otherwise.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
So told otherwise.
Christine, I think you were next.
I had a question. These two slivers are part of another lot. How can you have different parts of a lot when there's two different owners? You know, the two parcels we're talking about are owned by the town of Yarmouth, and then you have the homeowner, you know, next to abutting it. You know, because you can't call up these two lots, you know, on the computer because they're part of the greater lot. You know, why wasn't it segregated into their own block and lot, you know, map and lot numbers?
Error.
Yeah, I can understand that.
It appears to me that the taxpayer is paying for those lots that we're talking about. They've already been combined by the assessor. Is that correct, Andy?
That is correct.
Yeah.
So now we're basically want to say to a guy, hey, you've been paying taxes on it, so now give us more money for something that he didn't own.
Well, we would say thank you, though.
We would.
If he doesn't come back and ask for an abatement, too bad. Yeah. If he doesn't do it within a certain time frame, too bad, so sad.
Right. Tom Aaron?
Yeah, last meeting, one of the questions was whether or not these two parcels, C10 and C11, were being taxed at all, and whether or not that that could be, could that be determined, and then where do we go from there? I do understand what Jim is talking about, trying to find a good basis for a value, but the first question is, have taxes been being paid on those two lots to begin with?
They have. We determined that they had been paying taxes.
Then as I would say, it's open game. It's open season for whoever wants to buy them. And if it's the abutting property puts in the best bid, then we go from there, or the town goes from there, not we.
Yeah. So Andy, in my opinion, we need some help with some parameters, because it seems to me that the properties we've looked at these last two meetings have been very much a bicycle with training wheels on it. We anticipate some much more challenging properties for us to look at coming down the pike for us. So I think the committee here, and I'm speaking for myself, but my sense from listening to everyone, if we had some sort of parameter to help us, some sort of guideline that we could use as a starting point. People agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Can I weigh in? I think if we're looking at pieces of property, we shouldn't probably get hung up on value. You know, the market is dictate that value. I think we need to look at these properties in a way of, is it of value to the town to hold this piece of property, or is it of a value to the town to let it go? And if it's of value to the town to hold it, then obviously what uses have been put in place by restrictions such as, you know, conservation restrictions, et cetera. So look at those. Say, well, look, this piece of property was purchased for conservation. We don't have to worry about value because we know we're going to keep that property. The properties that we're determining that are of no value to the town to hold, if you will, or have restrictions that make it undevelopable, those quickly just eliminate. And then when we get down to that useful package of what we want to dispose of, the market is going to dictate value. So I don't think we should say, hey, you know, it's worth X amount of dollars, because that's beyond the expertise of most people on this committee. No, but that's what I do and not you.
We have you.
With the one in Yarmouthport, Andy, what would happen if you were to correct the error? That's going to show you the difference in value but based upon buildable land. Because when you've assembled it, it became part of that other lot using that 130 code. Once you take it back out, it now becomes a 132. So I think if I'm the owner and you take that out, you reduce my assessed value, I might just say, I just got my gift there. I don't have to buy it. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think as I don't know if you missed that part right at the beginning. That on that particular parcel, we're looking at a value of anywhere from $400 to $4,000, depending upon how we treated it. As an unbuildable lot, the valuation on it was $400. And again, keep in mind that that's because the state requires us to value all unbuildable parcels the same way. We basically were valuing them as, you know, $1,500 an acre. It's being run through the neighborhood code. So if the neighborhood is getting a positive adjustment above the norm, then it's run through that as well. And if there are any other adjustments or waterfront or water influence adjustments, it's run through that as well. So they're going to be different, as Jim had said, based on its location. But for the most part, they're valued minimally, or should be. A lot of them, because they are town owned, and this 964 is kind of an anomaly. But because they're town owned and we get no revenue out of them anyways, nobody's paying a lot of attention to them when they're being valued. So I certainly can't tell you that, yes, they're all being valued as unbuildable lots. I don't know how many we're talking about. That may be a good starting point. Let's take a look at the database that you have, that you're thinking about possibly conveying, and let's make sure they're all valued as unbuildable lots. That may be a starting point.
And if I can quickly jump in again, if it's valued at 400 today, and it becomes let's look at the one over on Mill Hill. If that's valued at $1 a foot as unbuildable, once it becomes assembled with the other, that $1 of value now becomes something different because it's now part of the bigger piece. So the town's going to benefit through increased tax revenue by making it part of no longer an unbuildable lot, part of a buildable lot. So we'll benefit that way. If we sell it at 400, we're still going to make out in the long run because it'll increase the value of the parcel that it's being assembled with and taxed at that rate versus the unbuildable rate. Am I correct, Andy?
Absolutely. In that example of the only one that I've been involved in was the 964, you're talking about $400. So it's at a 956 tax rate. That's going to be somewhere around $2 in taxes. Whereas if it's a $4,000, which is kind of the contributory value to the abutter's parcel, you're talking about an additional $40 in taxes.
All right, Andy, thank you. Anyone other questions from anyone? Oh, Kathy, please.
I just looked up the use code to that parcel on Bluff, and it says 930F. What is a 930F?
9 obviously is and if you'd like, what I can do is I can forward to Karen the use codes, Massachusetts use codes for everybody. 9 denotes that it's exempt, first of all. Okay. The 930 probably denotes that it's municipal. The F would denote that it was something that was acquired through foreclosure.
And then the only other question I had, I guess is kind of to the group a little bit, is at our last meeting, we were trying to come up with we're thinking about having a minimum value for the auction. And we had done the assessed value for those 2 other parcels. It sounds like maybe some of this conversation is bringing us around to something a little bit different. I know that memo has not been sent to the Board of Selectmen yet, and I don't know whether you guys want to adjust your recommendation that it be the assessed value. So that's something I guess the committee might want to think about.
I don't even know if I should bother to bring this up. I just remember a few years back, this is probably 15 years or so ago, and it's something to consider. If it's valued at, $400, for example, and somebody says, oh, hey, piece of land for $400, I'll go ahead and buy it because I live in Harwich and now I'm entitled to a beach sticker. Happened in Dennis a few years back. And so it's something that you may want to address. If it's an unbuildable lot,
Wasn't somebody selling like little parcels of land to get rights? Yeah, I remember that.
You are correct, Jim. And we stopped that. And I remember who was doing it. And they would subdivide an acre of land into insignificant lots. But I think there's a policy that was adopted, at least when I was here, to stop that. So there's a good point though, Andy, because postage stamp, hey, I own a piece of Ireland, one of those type of things.
Right. No, that's a great point. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We're ready to move on to the second item on our agenda. It's possible vote for these lots C10 and C11. That's something I'm not sure if Karen has more. Oh,
Rick, are we going to have a vote on what to do on 964?
That's where we're headed, Tom. That's the second item on the agenda.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
This was a little bit of an unusual meeting. Typically, I would meet with Kyle and the staff in advance of these meetings. We didn't have that opportunity yesterday because of the holidays, so I'm kind of feeling my way along here. Hope no one minds. But so as has been discussed and we reviewed last time, 964 Route 6A. I was wondering if there needs more discussion or if someone would like to make a statement to that, whether or not we should take a vote on. Jim, you have your hand up.
I would recommend that Andy correct the property card so that we can see the difference in value. And then I think you just approach that particular abutter. Does he want to buy it or not? But I think, part of it needs to be, we need to, no matter what, we need to fix the property card to reflect what the guy actually owns versus what the town owns. But I think by doing that, it's going to trigger the fact that the guy's going to say, wow, look at this. I've reduced my value of my house, so I'm saving tax money. Why would I buy it?
Yeah. $400. Yeah, it's a big whoop.
He has a legitimate reason for purchasing it. I mean, I spoke to this gentleman well before when he was trying to purchase it. There's some title issue that's all messed up because of this that he's hoping to fix by just purchasing it. So it does have an extended value for him beyond. I think I think in other words, he does want to buy it. He may not want to buy it for $40,000, but at $400, I think he would jump at it, salivating.
Oh, sure. So can the town go direct to the individual and say, listen, we want to sell you this piece of property for X amount of dollars, or does it have to go out to bid?
I think it has to go out. We did that on those small bridle path parcels, very skinny parcels down in, I think it was West Yarmouth. And we had a series of those, and we defined them, and then wound up selling them to the abutters. And we did it for a couple of $100, whatever the value was. But you do have to go out and do a bid. Chapter 30B is fairly specific on that.
For foreclosed properties?
Is an auction, I'm sorry, Kathy, is an auction an alternative?
Yes.
We were going to say the same thing, Karen.
Thanks.
As I say, in my opinion, yes.
In my opinion, yeah, mine too.
No,
I'm wondering, I think, Rick, I think Kathy raised a valid point about the letter. I'm going to see if I can.
I completely agree with you. It seems like.
I'm going to see if I can pull it up on my screen. I don't, unless Kyle has it handy.
Yeah, let's make this as friendly as possible for everyone involved, in my opinion. You know, let's. And Bob, can we send them a letter asking for their interest in perhaps quoting a value, and then sharing the results of that communication with the selectmen as a way to go forward?
Yes, because as long as we don't make any commitment to them, we say, by the way, we have this parcel, it's next to you. Are you interested? Here are some values, you know, not being specific, and then we put it out to bid. And we can tell them what the process is.
Okay.
If it's approved, we'll go to the Board of Selectmen and then to town meeting, and then you'll have an opportunity to bid or auction, dependent upon, yes.
I mean, it would be great if we could somehow do this in a direct manner, so we would not be faced with the costs of orchestrating an auction and, you know, the resultant.
Yep. It's really preliminary work. You're not making any commitments, so.
Exactly. Kyle, did you get all that? I'm missing Kyle here, not hearing him.
I think Kyle is multitasking.
Okay.
He's muted, but I think he's listening.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have the, so do you want to go back to the memo in last week's votes?
Yes.
I'm going to pull up a copy of the memo. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Too small. Let me see if I
have my 18 pages in my hand.
The last paragraph.
Yeah.
Ah, much better.
Navigating my screens. So if you can see my cursor and the blue,
yes,
that was your vote last week.
Right. It's interesting. I was thinking about this week. It seems to me if we utilize the assessed value in these properties, it's highly defendable from our point of view as a committee. That I almost had the sense that we should come up with that as a reserve price if we were to go to auction with these process and see how that flew.
This is a question for Bob Lawton. If we go to public auction without having a minimum set, if somebody offered $1, we sell it for $1.
If it was that type of an auction, there are two different types of auctions. I don't remember the technical name. One is you'll take whatever you get. The second is it's not a reserve, but there's a minimum. And then, so the auctioneer starts at $400, let's say. The problem would be if no one bids the 400, it doesn't sell. And we'd have to go back and redo something.
I think that was I'm sorry, Rick. I think that was at least part of the conversation that I recall from the last meeting was, you know, we can give it a shot. If it doesn't work, then we'll understand. You know, I like how Jim keeps going back to the market values, and we'll understand that the market's not going to bear that.
So one way you can protect that is to an absolute, what they refer to as a
absolute auction.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. I couldn't remember the name.
That's take whatever you get as an absolute auction.
Yes.
Yeah, but you're going to establish a minimum bid to start with.
Mhm.
So if our minimum bid is 4,000 and the guy bids 4,001 cent, well, that's what we get.
Mhm.
We can't then say, well, no, we want more.
Right, right.
And using the assessed value that we have on the properties is a very reasonable starting point. The market might price it higher, but at least on an auction, a minimum price is being upfront is at least satisfies the town requirements.
Mhm.
So the interesting thing of these two pieces that you're looking at, the 4,000 and the 9,700, based upon the discussions that we have, it's not unlikely that the $4,000 parcel at auction would sell for more than the $9,700 one, because you've got two people are interested in the four,
Mhm.
and no interested except for that one owner at the other. So that owner of the one with the Oak Bluffs Road, he may tell you, I'll give you $4,000 for it. I may give you $400. So, but the other one, they may say, I'll give you $8 because I want it versus my neighbor. That's why I say the market is going to dictate.
Always does. Always does. Well, again, I go back to what I said. It's defendable from our point of view, and it's a starting point.
Might I recommend that we suggest that they always use a minimum bid of the assessed value unless otherwise indicated?
Would you like to make a motion on that, Jim?
I make a motion to recommend that parcels that become available for disposition set a minimum bid of the assessed value unless otherwise indicated.
I'd second that. I'd second that,
Tom
Rick.
Barron?
Yeah.
All in favor? Do I need to read the roll before I speak?
You need a roll call.
Okay. And I need that in front of me. Something happened to my screen here.
Let me stop the share. That'll help. You can see everybody now.
Great. Thank you. Jim Saban?
Aye.
Karen Green? Can't do it.
Don't get a vote.
You don't get a vote. Tom Barron?
Aye.
Kathy Williams does not get a vote. Christine?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
And I think that's it.
Bob gets to vote.
Bob gets to vote.
Even though town administrator, because I'm appointed under a different section.
Okay. Thank you. And I also vote aye. So seems unanimous.
That's good.
Thank you. I think that's a great point for us.
6-0. So it seems your letter stands.
Yes.
Drafted, and I guess that leaves you to how to handle the request around 964 Route 6A.
Correct. Something as a Christine, did you have your hand up? Christine?
Pardon?
Did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay, I thought you did. Simply, I think we could go forth with a motion to offer that friendly outreach to the property owner, and as we discussed, and see if that was, Kathy is stopping me.
I would just do what Jim suggested first, have Andy fix it and find out the differential between the two. So then you'll have a general idea what number we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine with me.
He'll have all the information that way. That's
Perfect.
the question.
Great, thank you. So Andy, go ahead.
I do have a question, and it kind of goes back to my suggestion because, for example, I was just playing around with two of these parcels that Kathy had mentioned. And when I talked about, assessed as an unbuildable or not, these are not. So the vote you just took would be to use its assessed value of 9,700, for example. But in reality, if it's valued as an unbuildable lot, the value would be roughly $100. So you could have a situation where one is going to be assessed properly as an unbuildable lot, and it's going to be valued at 100 or 400, Another one is not necessarily valued appropriately and is going to be valued at 9,700. So I kind of think it goes back to my suggestion of let's get them.
See, I'm of the belief the assessor's office never makes a mistake. So I have to believe that those numbers are good.
Well, and again, again, you're talking about, untaxable property. So it's, not really paid attention to, but again, just a suggestion.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the committee.
But as part of the motion, it was for Andy to take a look at it and fix it, as what Jim had talked about earlier, and what whoever made the motion had as part of the motion that we're voting upon now.
Correct. That's right.
So can I weigh in again? So Andy brings a good point up. If we're setting a minimum bid of the assessed value of $9,700, that lot's never going to sell. The owners that have the rest of it, unless they need it for an addition to their property or something. But if it's just nothing more than to say they own to the corner, they're never going to pay the $9,700. So if we're setting a minimum of $9,700 on that lot, we probably won't ever sell it.
But
go ahead, Bob.
I'm talking about.
But I thought, Jim, part of the motion was that Andy looks at it and fixes it.
That's 6A.
Fix it to make it a realistic value, because it's maybe overvalued now based upon the criteria he uses. I think that's what Andy was saying earlier.
Yes.
Let me look at these. Let me adjust it, and then we could vote to authorize the sale, maybe for $400. Maybe it is $100, but.
So are we talking about?
You're talking about two different properties.
Oh, I thought the motion was on 964 Route 6A, which was the $9,700 lot. I don't know what the value is, and Andy said he could fix that. May or may not be. Yes, no?
That's what I understood too, that he was going to take a look at that property.
Yeah. That makes sense, Jim? I mean.
Yeah, I think with regards to Route 6A, yeah, but I reverted back to the Oak Bluffs and the scenario that if we would apply the assessed value as a minimum bid, with that only one person interested, then he might not even buy it at I don't know, have that in front of me, so I don't know what the value of that was, but
in my opinion, we shouldn't be hypothesizing, as you said 2 or 3 times. Let the market determine the price, and we won't know that until we get a response from the potential customer. So as I learned you can always go down in price, you can't go up. So let's.
No, you can go up. Trust me, you can go up. Nobody's paying list price anymore. They're paying 5% above list price.
Yeah,
Property
wow.
value increased 33% this last year. So a house that was worth $400,000 in January of 2020 is now worth $530,000.
Wow.
Asking.
There's less than 500 houses for sale on all of Cape Cod right now.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Typically 3,000, 4,000, 5,000.
Is that right?
Yeah, the list that we talked about the last meeting, the foreclosed properties, a lot of those are unbuildable lots, as Andy has talked about, but they have had for some reason or other a value attached to them, and from that perspective, that's what we should use as our minimums on any other future properties. But essentially, part of that work has been done for us, buildable or not buildable. It's already been done for us. So we start from that point of departure, shall we say?
And I believe that was agreed to, Tom. So
okay.
That's our defendable starting point.
Yeah. But I mean, when it comes to saying it's buildable or unbuildable, as I said, there's already a list that has been determined, and there may be other situations that arise and other properties, but at least those that we know are somewhere in our wheelhouse that we have to deal with upcoming meetings. That's part of the decision has already been made for us.
Right, and we agreed at the last meeting that they need to be looked at individually, because if these non-buildable pieces are added to a property, it can change dramatically the opportunities for that property owner.
Agreed.
All right, so just to get back to our agenda, item 2, we're going to wait till Andy provides us with information in terms of readjusting the values on these properties, and then we'll take a look at them again at our subsequent meeting. Is that agreed? Oh, Karen?
Yeah, I just want to ask, and I want to make sure I understand kind of what we're trying to do, because we do have the list that Tom was just holding up. So Ed produces a list of foreclosed properties. And Andy, what I understood you to say was maybe we, so this one on 6A, and even these other 2 lots, which really don't seem very buildable, though they're assessed at values that are not insubstantial. Does it make sense to go through that foreclosed property list and have you take a look, Andy, and kind of recalibrate the values?
That's kind of what I had suggested up front, because just because it's on that list doesn't mean it's valued as an unbuildable lot. It might be an unbuildable lot, but it doesn't mean it's valued that way.
Right. So I think that might be, and I don't know, Tom, is that list numbered? Can you tell how many properties are on that list?
The 2 that we've already agreed on were on that list as well. But the total list is 88 properties. So we're down to 86 properties now.
So Andy, that seems like a bit of a lift. How long would that take to go through?
How long do I have?
Tomorrow.
What can you do in a month?
I can have them done.
Great, thank you.
So maybe that's a suggestion. Kathy, go.
I'm just wondering what, are you going to be giving a range, Andy, or are you going to, I would think that all the foreclosed properties, the reason the town owns them is because they were useless to the person who owned it and they just decided to stop paying taxes.
Right. And
that's why we ended up with it. So they're all, I would say, not buildable unto themselves. But when you were talking about what's the increased value of adding it to an adjacent property. So what value, is there a range of the different, obviously if it's buildable, it's one way. If it's not buildable, it's another. But is there not that middle ground of, but what's the value to adding it to another adjacent parcel that's buildable? Because everyone who's inquired so far is looking to do it because they want to do some expansion. Those 2 other parcels, they do want to expand their properties.
Yes.
One woman wants to add a garage and she does need it for the side yard setback. So those are the reasons people have been expressing interest in it. So are you giving a range, or what would you be providing?
My intention was to make sure that they are valued appropriately as unbuildable lots.
Right.
So they'll be next. So even the one that we're looking at now would probably be reassessed much lower.
Maybe.
Potentially, yes.
So we've already then put a memo into the Board of Selectmen saying 9,700 and 4,000. So do you want to wait until Andy has that? I just want to be consistent for you guys. I want you guys to be consistent. So do you want to wait until
minimum value? All we're doing is getting a minimum value.
But a defensible minimum
value, and then it's adjusted accordingly.
And I would think that of that 80 something parcels, a lot of is going to only require Andy and his staff to take a quick look, because they'll see that just quickly looking at numbers, they'll see that it's accurate. But if they've got a 0.17 acre piece of land and it's assessed for $50 million, then that's a red flag to them. So they're going to red flag stuff that doesn't look right, I would guess, and address those that don't look right, and at the rest we can stick with the numbers that he's already applied. Is that correct, Andy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
See, the conundrum, in my opinion, is though that we already have a potential buyer expressing the interest in the property because they have a real need for it that will increase the value of their property pretty substantially. So for us to consider an opportunity for them to pay $400 to expand their property, I have a difficult time with that. I'm not sure how we reconcile it, but I'm just getting that discussion point out there. You know, there is we're giving them something quite valuable actually, and I don't know how we come up with a number to attach to that, but it just requires more discussion amongst this committee.
So Rick, but keep in mind that $400
yes.
might be considered $1 a square foot. So if we sell it to him for $400 and it was assessed at $1 a square foot, once he assembles that into everything else, now the town's going to assess them at market value, which would be $12.
I understand.
So
yeah.
For it that way is what gets it back on the tax rolls.
Come on, Jim. I want it both ways.
Don't we all? So I'm okay with selling $400 if we're going to get it back on the tax rolls by adding it to, because the one that we talked about where the guy wanted to build a garage. Okay, so let's say we run that through. What if we sell it to that guy for $400? Well, now he's got the ability to add his garage, which adds $15,000 in value to his improvements, and plus the land. So now his improved house, instead of being worth $400,000, is now worth $475,000. We're getting our money back that way.
Okay, that's it.
You want to send the memo to the Board of Selectmen with the other values, I guess is my last.
Yeah, I think we need to wait on the memo until we have more information.
Right.
Okay.
Done.
Hey, Karen.
Can I say, and just through you to Andy. Andy, so we'll get you the information on the other 2 parcels that we've been talking about, but maybe you can help us with generating an example of how this is beneficial. Kind of, you know, Jim kind of, you know, outlined it, but maybe we can describe better how the assessment department would, you know, change the values.
Yeah, that's good, Karen. Thank you.
964 Route 6A.
Right, it's a great example.
Right.
Yes.
Unbuildable out, you're going to see the value difference.
Right, so I think we're comfortable. I think, Andy, thank you for doing that for us. And we'll anticipate receiving that from you within our next 2 meetings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Andy.
Good.
Upcoming meetings, item 3 on the agenda. Kyle, I'm not sure if you have some potential dates for us to think about.
I don't have any potential dates. If you guys wanted to keep on the Tuesday, I guess we could do like March 9th or March 16th.
We talked about
if you stick with the 3rd Tuesday of the month, just for regularity, that's the 16th of March.
With the understanding that there's also an Affordable Housing Trust meeting that same 3rd Tuesday.
Oh,
you don't want that.
Good point. Maybe not such a good date.
Well,
especially when you have a selectmen's meeting too, Bob.
Yeah, at least for the month of March, maybe into April, but then not so much.
Here's hoping.
Will you stay on this committee after?
Oh yeah, it's a separate appointment. So yes, I'd be here. For better or worse, I will still be with you. So is the second Tuesday too soon? I hate to go to the 4th. That's a little much.
Yeah, that'll be the 9th.
It's up to Andy.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have it done by then, I wouldn't imagine. How about if we?
Well, I mean, why don't you go with that date if that works for everybody else? The
16th.
16th.
Oh, okay.
We'll go for the 2nd, and I'll talk to Andy and see, you know, what he can get done, and even if it's a partial list, it'll be helpful, and maybe we'll get the example that we talked about. If we prioritize that, then you might be able to get rid of the memo.
It's fine with me. Karen, do you have other potential agenda items for us now?
Today?
Yeah, I didn't know if you did. It's listed, so I just didn't know if it.
Yep, I do not.
Okay.
This
we'll
one's
get that
stuck up
at a
on
later
me.
date then.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is it the intention of the committee to take each one of these 80 plus parcels and have this type of discussion, or are we going to find a way to say all of these we can put up to auction without having a discussion? Oh, well, what do you think it's worth? Or how to, I think that we're going to find that a lot of that 87 parcels is pretty straightforward. Let's, you know, it's unbuildable. You know, it's a piece of land that those criteria. Let's put a big blanket. I'd prefer us to do this in a large number versus bits and pieces for the next.
Jim, you know, I've had that same discussion with myself. I think until we have the information from Andy, I'd like to table that to answering that. I think we'll be able to make some decisions based on the information.
Absolutely. Once we get that from Andy, we'll be able to do that. I just don't want to spend.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
because I also anticipate there'll be some other properties that will require a big effort on our parts.
Yeah, some of these will be more complex than simply, you know, 400 square feet on a corner of a lot.
Right. Yeah. Christine, go ahead.
On the short list that Kyle had given us, the property listed as Old Townhouse Road. It's actually the DuPont Avenue property going into Flex Pond. That's 10 acres of property that I had objected to 2 years ago at town meeting. It didn't come through open space because it came through foreclosure. But I had discussed it with DPW, with Jeff Colby. And his opinion is anytime you can expand Wellfield property, we should keep it, you know, as Wellfield properties. The property to the west, you know, behind all of that industrial property is all Wellfields. So I have written to Jeff, you know, asking him to reconfirm his wish to keep that 10 acres as Wellfield, but I haven't heard yet back from him. So I'll share that with everybody once I hear back from Jeff.
Thank you, Christine. Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon this committee, in my opinion, that if it's a larger parcel, that we would reach out to town butters, recreation, or whomever it is appropriate at that time to ask for their opinion before we go forward.
And I've done.
For the record, we do that as a part of our normal process for every single.
Perfect. Wasn't aware of that, Kyle. Thank you.
So those large parcels, Kyle, have you assembled them in a way that we can provide them to conservation?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, but we will. When it gets to that point, we will, seek comment from all the applicable town departments as spelled out in the policy that we must do for every single request.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then the selectmen would make the decision as to whether it would be in this DuPont Wellfield, or it would be turned over to housing to build affordable housing, or recreation to build a baseball field. That's their purview.
The way the policy is written, just to remind you, is this committee, the Land Disposition Committee, will make recommendation on everything. So whether it's a laundry list of 80 properties that came in through foreclosure that are tiny lots, you'll make that recommendation. If it's a bigger lot, you'll make that recommendation as well. And like Kyle said, the way the policy is written will solicit feedback from staff regarding their various interests, like just like Christine's done with Jeff relative to the wellhead protection. And just of note on that large parcel, there are 2 requests that have been submitted for that parcel. One for the parcel in whole and one for the parcel in part. So it's hard balancing kind of how are we going to go about selling things or recommendations, and entertain. This is one where we have 2 competing applications, and it's a sizable lot for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think we come into play to decide whether we should sell it or not. And then if we sell it, we got to put it out to bid and let them fight it out.
Yeah.
But we're also going to deal with that internally as well. If we, reckon back to when I was a selectman and we had that 12-acre piece off of Old Townhouse Road that was going to be made conservation until I said, wait a minute, what else can we do with it? Then then housing took an interest, and then the two couldn't come to an agreement as to how many lots, how many houses they could build or whatever. And nothing got done, and it's still sitting vacant today. So we'll have those discussions. You know, recreation may want something as much as open space or housing or whatever else.
You know, Jim, and I think that's great for this committee to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I would ask if anybody hasn't yet looked at that property, you know, to drive into Flax Pond and look at the wooded area to the right.
To the west?
To the west, on the west side.
Yes.
On the east side is Wellfield. On the west side is the property being considered.
Great. Okay. Thank you. If we have no other discussion points, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
I'll call the roll, please, Karen.
Sure. Jim Saban?
Yep.
Bishop?
Aye.
Christine Marzigliano?
Aye.
Tom Barron?
Aye.
Brian Gardner?
Aye.
And Robert Lawton?
Aye.
All in favor, then
All in
unanimous?
favor.